I don't know that I would have been drawn to running if he wasn't a runner. And to me, it seems like, whoa, my dad did that. Like, he ran 26 miles at 65 years old. Like, how did he do that? Never thinking I would ever run a marathon. And then running evolved into a very negative thing for me. In college, I began to really struggle with an eating problem, and I used exercise as a way to kind of just beat myself up. And it just spiraled into just depression, and they actually kicked me out of NYU because they were worried I was a liability. I think I just needed someone to say, like, you're not okay, and we see that. So my father, like I said, was 62 when I was born. And when I turned 24, he had a massive stroke. Seeing my dad in that state, it changed my whole life. Me fast forwarding, thinking, what if that happens to me? I want to live so much every day. I want to squeeze the sponge of life. And I started running because I appreciated that I could. Of course, it was in the back of my mind, oh no, 100 miles once it started. But the only thing I was focused on was just getting to the next checkpoint. There's something about having a singular focus that is freeing, where literally the only thing I did for 29 hours was move forward.
Welcome back to another episode of Coffee, Matcha Soul. I'm Saro, and I'm here with Guy and Zaire, and we're doing another episode with this time a very special guest, Victoria Negri. Victoria Negri is an award-winning filmmaker and ultramarathon runner. Her feature debut, Gold Star, which she wrote, directed, produced, and acted in, features Oscar-nominated actor Robert Vaughn in his last on-screen performance. She is currently in development on her second feature film, Ultra, with executive producers David Lowery, James Johnson, and Toby Holbrooks. Recently, Victoria completed her first 100-mile race, the Daytona 100, and is excited for more running goals in the future. Victoria, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We can't wait to hear everything about the race and what you have going next. But first, before we get started, you have to tell us, what is your drink of choice today?
Oh, matcha with almond milk.
Stop losing the race.
You're outnumbered this time. I think we have. Cheers to matcha. We got three matchas. Yes.
Well, I'm gonna say cheers to
coffee.
Cheers
to coffee.
to coffee.
I'm winning by one, Guy, or we've lost count.
No, you're
keeping
winning.
tally
A
of
little bit. We got
matchas
a
versus
little competition.
coffees.
Who chooses more matcha over coffee?
That's why I was telling you, Victoria. I was banking on you.
I'm so sorry.
But anyway, next time.
Next time.
Next episode.
Yeah.
You know what you have to say? That we have decaf. So people get enticed to
decaf.
get the coffee.
You want to
doesn't
switch?
matcha-
You want to switch? We have decaf.
Caffeine. It's got
Maybe.
just
Maybe
doesn't make it
later.
sugary. It's got
Do
a
an
lot
intermission.
Yeah,
Come
next
back.
time.
It's got a lot of benefits. But.
Yeah.
So, Victoria, before we get into the ultra marathon that you ran, could you tell us, like, when you got started, what inspired you to start running in the first place?
Yeah, running goes way, way back for me. My dad was a runner, and I like have memories as a kid of being brought to the track near our house. And my dad being like, all right, run a couple laps and sprint, and just like trying to encourage us to run. And I absolutely hated it. I was like, this is so boring and ridiculous. But my dad was a runner. He did a ton of 5Ks. He did, the most fun race we would go to was a half marathon, which ended on a beach and had a ton of food. So as a kid, like, it's like, oh, I can't wait for the food afterwards on the beach. But also just watching my dad, like, I didn't realize it then, but like, I have amazing memories just being excited to watch him cross the finish line and hoping he would win. And he won a lot in his age group. My dad was much older. He was 62 when I was born. So he was like winning the age groups of the, 65 plus people. And he would always joke, he's like, I'm not like winning. I'm just like outliving these people. They're just dying before me. But yeah, I did a couple races with him. And I don't know that I really enjoyed it as much as it was an opportunity to spend time with my dad. And I think I also battled a lot of like trying to be perfect for my parents and like, all right, what did my parents love? How can I do that? What can bring us together? Rather than kind of like my dad seeing me for who I was. It was like, he loves running, I'll do the race with him. But I still look back on those memories like, oh wow, that was special. So it's like really complicated. Like I don't know that I would have been drawn to running if he wasn't a runner. I don't remember it, but he ran the New York City Marathon when I was, I think, 2 or 3. And I was 3. And he would just tell the story of like running across the Verrazano Bridge and seeing New York, the skyline, and approaching it, and the first mile of the race, how exciting everything was. And to me, it seems like, whoa, my dad did that. Like he ran 26 miles at 65 years old. Like, how did he do that? Never thinking I would ever run a marathon, never wanting to, but maybe in the back of my mind wondering if I could. So yeah, I didn't grow up loving running. And then I played soccer. Soccer was my thing in high school. I know we were just talking about that. I loved soccer. I needed a goal to run. Like I could run really fast if I was chasing a ball. So that was always my thing. And then running evolved into a very negative thing for me. I'm just going to get deep and personal.
Yeah.
But in college, I began to really struggle with an eating problem. And I used exercise as a way to kind of just beat myself up and run just a lot to counteract anything I ate. And it just spiraled into just depression. And I isolated I was either in class alone in my dorm room or running. And I hated it even more. Like running to me was not a thing to feel powerful and strong. It was a thing to punish and remove any kind of source of sustenance. And it was guilt. It was math in my head, obsessing about numbers, being like,
you said you had to burn.
Yeah, like I ate this last night and now I have to run this morning, and being like, all right, I'll let myself eat this, and tomorrow I know I have to run this many miles. And just so awful and so bad. And
were you aware of that at that time? Were you?
I wasn't at first. Like I remember it really snuck up on me and then just became kind of too late. Well, not too late because I'm fine now, but like my freshman year I showed up and I remember thinking like, all right, I don't want to be one of those students that just like gains a ton of weight and eats really unhealthy dorm food and is kind of just partying and not focused. Like I'm here for a reason. And I just kind of became controlling about everything. Like every minute of my day was scheduled. And then freshman year, it slowly took over. And then sophomore year, like every day I could not function. And I sought help for it. But by then it was hard to I knew I could not keep living that way. And it was so hard to break that habit. And they actually kicked me out of NYU because they were worried I was a liability. I was deeply suicidal. And they're like, we will not let you continue here. You need to go home or somewhere, get help, continue receiving help, therapy, and have a note from a therapist saying you are well enough to return. And I just remember I went home I did all of that. And the running, I kind of let go of it. I just stopped doing it as much. I stopped punishing myself. I think I just needed someone to say, like, you're not okay, and we see that. And to release the pressure of achieving in school and in every single thing. And then like fast forwarding, like I got better. I went back to NYU.
So, but how was it for you to go back home and having to tell your parents what was going on with you?
My parents knew what was going on. They were so supportive. They would come into the city almost every weekend to spend time with me, to literally like take me to a restaurant and make me eat and bring me home and say like, okay, you're going to be home a couple days. You're like, it's okay to miss a class, whatever. It was the hardest time in my entire life. And that includes like losing my father at 25. Like it was more difficult than that because I didn't have any coping mechanisms. And I was just hated myself without realizing it. Like I was just beating myself up. And no one knew, like everyone in school thought it was fine. Like I was getting straight A's. I showed up to, I maybe missed a class or two. I was fully functioning and held it together, except what was going on in my mind and my body just was like awful. And again, if you told me then that I would end up loving running and using it as a source of strength and consuming massive amounts of food in order to get strong and continue running, I would never believe that.
Yeah.
So now we fast forward.
Well, before you fast forward.
So I'm just like trying to put all the pieces together.
Because it is very interesting how it's come around full circle.
Yeah.
But before we leave this period, could you say, or do you know what it was that you hated about yourself? Did you ever get to the point of like, because I could say like, I actually in my 20s, I understand the punishing because I was punishing myself through my Kung Fu training. I would train 8 hours a day, sometimes just all day, not eating, just training.
Yeah.
But now I look back, I know why I hated myself. So, and also why when you say suicidal, I even understand that thought or tendency, but it's because I had Crohn's disease and I hated that defect in me. And I saw myself as defective. Like I wasn't normal and all I wanted to be was normal. And so I thought if I just keep training, maybe I could fix myself and I could become normal. And so that was a cycle that was playing out. But I wonder if you worked out what it was that, that you didn't like about yourself or that was driving this.
I think I had a lot of trouble connecting with people. I had a ton of anxiety. Being dropped off in New York I wasn't even 18 when I went to NYU. I was 17. I felt very isolated, and as someone who I definitely had social anxiety, and I think it wasn't easy for me to immediately make friends. And I think I just used it. It really started with control. I just felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt like I had like very low self-esteem, and I think I was really drawn to acting then, where now I'm not as much, which is interesting. I was really drawn to acting then because it was an opportunity to pretend to be confident and pretend to be somebody I wasn't, when inside I had zero confidence and I was really anxious. I was like terrified. I remember my mom and dad left. Like when they dropped me off, my mom was like, okay, just leave your dorm room open. Let people talk to you. And I was so scared. I was just like, oh my God, how am I gonna do this?
How did the acting help you break out of the anxiety?
That's definitely why I started doing it too. I was like, I've always, and I think it's like, it all links to doing the crazy long running because I've always been drawn to doing the thing that scares me the most because I know it'll make me better.
Yeah.
It'll like heal me in some way, even if it takes a while or I want to do that scary thing. Acting was terrifying to me, but I loved movies. I absolutely loved movies. And I was like, I wonder if I can do that. And I think it will help.
Wow.
Like in high school, I did not speak. I was like in the back of the room. If I knew the answer, I wouldn't be like, I got it. I would just be like,
Wow.
And when kids heard I got into NYU for acting, they were like, what, you did one play. But I was like secretly like coming into New York, taking acting classes and just not talking about it and just quietly like going about my business and exploring like another version of me. I didn't want to be me. I think that was it. I just did not.
Yeah.
I looked at all these other people who made living look easy and I was like, how are you confident? How are you just existing amongst people and you're okay? Like I just never felt comfortable ever in my own skin.
But so that feeling of discomfort was happening when you were in the school, not when you were at home.
Well, you mean when I was in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely started in high school. But when you're living under your parents' roof, you can't, it really was a slow progression in over like a year. And living at home, going to high school is so different because I ate what my mom put in front of me. When I was left to my own devices at NYU, it started very normal, healthy, like grilled vegetables and a hummus sandwich. And, you know, I'm not going to go into details about what I ended up doing because I think going through that and knowing if anyone watches this or listens to it who has struggles with food, that's never helpful. But like, it just slowly got worse and worse and worse. And the running, like I remember exercising just to exercise because I'm like, I should do that to be healthy. And it started with not weird, but good things like I'm never going to take the elevator. Never. My whole freshman year, I never took an elevator. If I could have access to it, I would walk up 11 flights to my class.
Wow.
And I just started doing that everywhere. And then I was like, oh. And then it just started to translate to control with like calories and food and miles run and how many calories I burned per mile, like that kind of stuff. And it all was so negative. And
what year is this?
So this was 2004 was my freshman year. I'd say 2005 it got really bad.
Because it's interesting because now more and more people talk about you know, these
positive things like taking stairs, you mean, or
no, like having food issues and you know, but back in those days that would be considered a taboo. Like no one would be like eagerly talking about it. Whereas now, like people say, I have this issue, I have this, and you know, problem with this disorder with food, with you know, my image. So in 2004, like speaking out and saying something about it was unheard of.
Oh yeah. I had such shame, like deep, deep shame. It made me feel weak. And I remember feeling like I'm a superhero. I'm getting straight A's. I'm like, I can run this far. I can eat this little and still run that far. I would do these things like, I don't need friends. Like I'm alone in my dorm room, everyone's out having fun. Like, why do I need that? I'm gonna succeed. I'll show everyone. Meanwhile, I'm dying inside and I want to die, but your brain starts to play tricks on you. But the shame of it, like when I found out, and you're so right, like I never told anyone other than my family and my therapist. And to talk about it now, like even still, I'm like, oh, should I talk about this? It was the worst. Like I look back on that and I'm like, I don't recognize that version of myself at all. But when I took that semester off, I told my classmates that I was just leaving to audition more. Like I spun it like, oh, I'm getting all these opportunities, so I'm gonna focus on that. Meanwhile, like it wasn't true, of course, obviously. So yeah, no one had any idea. But yeah, that was a really tough period. And
when did it start turning around for you? Was it through the therapy and talking to that? Okay, so
pretty
within
immediately.
That, okay.
Because I just realized once I was home, I was like, what's the rest of my life gonna be? Am I just gonna keep beating myself up and get worse and have no passion or friends or like partner or anything? Do I want that? And so I just kind of put all of my effort into getting better. And whatever they told me to do, I did. I did all of it, the journaling, the like tracking my nutrition, the uncomfortable exercises and therapy they made me do. And I moved back to New York in May. So I left in December, I moved back in May. And I lived alone in an apartment off campus and got a job and just started trying to hang out with people and didn't beat myself up anymore in exercising. I gained weight and felt like so bloated and like, oh God, but this is good. This is good. And yeah, it's amazing in retrospect how quick I bounced back. And I think again, it's like I throw myself into the scary thing. I was like, I don't want to stay at home. This is too easy to just live here and not push myself. And when I went back to school, people who knew me from freshman year were like, we don't recognize you. Like, who are you? This is awesome. Like, you're a different person. And then I started to open up and tell a few people as I got closer, like, yeah, I was struggling with this huge thing. And they're like, oh my God, we had no idea. And yeah, I'm really lucky. Like my parents were really, my whole family were really supportive, and I put everyone through hell.
Was there a specific epiphany or something that you were told by the therapist or that you did that you found to give you the most help in like resolving that issue for you? Was there?
The thing I was funny, I just did some journaling about this the other day. The thing I always think back to is less like advice or epiphany and more just a question, homework assignment that my therapist gave me while I was at NYU that made me realize how bad I was. Her homework to me was, can you this week ask one person to do something social? And I started sobbing and I said, no, I can't. I can't. I don't know how. I'm terrified to do that. And I had all these, what if they don't like the thing I suggest? What if I don't know what to say? What if it's boring or lame? Or all these fears and self-doubt and self-consciousness and low self-esteem stuff. And I was like, how can I can't, like that to me, I will never forget that I was that person. And I'm not anymore. Now I have to say, no, I'm like, okay, I'm my social calendar's too booked. It's too booked.
Yeah.
But I love hanging out with people. Like
Awesome.
I'm so glad I went through that because I know, like, I can get through stuff too. And I just, I don't know.
So when did your love of running
come back?
And I should say, because I know you, I feel like I don't recall when we did Gold Star and how old you were, but by the time I met you, you loved it. I mean, we talked about it.
I was like writing it into the movie. I'm like, any excuse you can get to run.
Even while making the movie, you'd make running. You were running. Yeah. So you were, but I don't know that you were doing it for a purpose yet. I don't think you did you didn't do your first marathon.
I did.
Oh, you did already?
Yeah. So it comes back around where I was just exercising for normal, not running races and stuff, just trying to stay healthy. And so my father, like I said, was 62 when I was born. And when I turned 24, he had a massive stroke. And it left him in a wheelchair. He couldn't speak. He could move one arm. He was trying to stand up, but he couldn't speak or eat for the last 14 months of his life. And seeing my dad in that state changed. I mean, we were speaking before this started about your experience with your friend. It changed my whole life of me fast forwarding, thinking, what if that happens to me? And I want to live so much every day. I want to squeeze the sponge of life. And I started running because I appreciated that I could. Seeing my dad fighting so hard every day just to move an arm, just to stand up for a second. And he never gave up. Like until the last time I saw him, he was doing exercises to try and regain strength in his lungs to be able to have the power to speak. And there are a lot of people that would have gone through that would have just crumbled, and he didn't. And yeah, I was back and forth between New York and Connecticut a lot, helping take care of him. And I just started, like I said, running because it made me feel strong. And
during that process, so it was in the middle of that process when you went back to running.
2011 is when I started really seeing it differently. Seeing my body as something that I want to push hard because I have legs that could move. So many people don't. And I want to know what they can do. And I want to, my version of appreciating my body now, where, like I said, 20 years ago, I hated it. I wanted it to wither away. Any extra anything on me, I was horrified by. And now I want to, the strength to be able to do that. And so I just started running, and I would come back home to my dad and tell him.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Do you have the chance to share with your
dad?
Yeah.
So I would tell him these runs and describe to him, I ran this street and this street, and it felt this way. And we would start to, and it became less about me trying to please him because he loved running. Because in a way, like I was, like he was living vicariously through, like, wow, we're sharing this because he loves it. But I gained a new appreciation for it. And then I had the goal. I was like, I got to do the New York Marathon. I got to do it. And I decided it somewhere, I forget exactly when, within that last 14 months of his life. And I realized I missed the entry period for the marathon. You can enter a lottery and get your name pulled. And I emailed whatever email address I found, and I just told them what was going on. I was like, can I please, like, just let me in? And they did.
Wow.
I got an email a few weeks later, and they're like, you're in, here's your info. And I just started crying. And I was like, oh my God. And I told my dad, I was like, I'm going to do the marathon. And it was our big goal for him to be able to come in. We had this handicap van where we could wheel him in, and my mom was going to bring him in to watch me do the marathon, which in retrospect is insane. Like, how are you going to bring a huge handicap van in and park it when there are millions of spectators? But it just gave him hope and something to be excited for too. And it was the year Hurricane Sandy happens in 2012. And the marathon was canceled.
Oh, wow.
And I lived on the Upper East Side at the time.
Where in the Upper East Side?
88th and 2nd.
Really?
Yeah.
I was living in 77th Street.
Oh,
and
nice.
First Avenue.
Oh, that's
at
one
the
of my
same
neighbors.
time.
That's great. Yeah, I was there between 2011 to 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's so strange going back to that neighborhood for me now because it's such a period of, like, it's so tied to this time in my life.
Yeah.
My father. But I loved running in Central Park.
So they canceled the marathon?
So they canceled the marathon. I found out I was at the expo about to get my bib. So excited. but also the hurricane had just happened. Like half the city was just getting electricity back. It was insanity. And they announced it. They're like, it's canceled, go home. And I was like, what? Wow. So my friend Rachel, who she still lives on the Upper East Side, she was also supposed to do the marathon. So I called her and I was like, what should we do? Should we just run anyway? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. So we ended up running our own, my first marathon, I count it, I did it. It was just me and Rachel doing the perimeter of Manhattan from Upper East Side around the bottom, coming back into Central Park, and just however many loops, figuring it out. And my boyfriend at the time filmed me and Rachel finishing. And, oh, I forgot. As I was running the whole time, I ran with my phone. And I would call my mom every couple miles to just check in. And she would put me on speaker so my dad could hear me. And I would say, I'm at mile 5 and I feel good. And oh no, I have a blister. And it was like he was running it with me. And it was so much, I would have never been, and the hurricane, awful that the hurricane happened. So many lives lost and affected. I had one beautiful moment where I would not have been able to talk to him during it if that didn't happen in that way. I don't think it would have occurred to me like, call him while you're running the huge race. I wouldn't have gotten the film's finish because no one can get anywhere near the finish line unless you pay a ton of money. And I just got to say, he got to see, I emailed my mom the video, and I had her call me when he watched it. And in the video, I just said, I'm doing this for you. I love you. You know, I forget what else I said, but it was short and sweet. And he got to see me do my first marathon. And he couldn't say anything, but I could hear him crying and choked up. And then I said goodbye. And he passed away a couple days later.
Wow.
And that's my last moment with my dad is that conversation. That was it. And when I went home, my mom, to go to his wake and funeral, his marathon medal, my mom just put on my bed without saying anything. And I still have it, his 1989 marathon medal. And that's, to me, like, I don't believe in a lot of like things. I don't care about things, but like that to me is the one thing from my dad that I'm like, I will always have that marathon medal. And of course now I'm just fully in it. I'm in it. I'm running a lot. Some years I don't run a ton. After that, I ended up running a lot of marathon. I just got really, really hooked really quickly of just like doing races and feel it, like reconnecting with my dad no longer with me while running, and appreciate just all of it, appreciating my ability to move, feeling strong, feeling like it's just a beautiful thing to have a lot of time away from a phone, away from society, away from work, and to just, it's a meditation.
It is, for sure.
And you know, I've done the New York Marathon a couple times now, I think 3 times, other marathons, half marathons. And then I did my first 50-miler in 2018. And then, I just started running further and further.
When did you make the leap from marathons to the 50-mile? Like, when did you start setting that goalpost further and further away to move to the 100-mile one that you did recently?
Yeah, I read a book called Born to Run that is written by an ultramarathon runner, and I'd never heard of these races. Someone just said, I forget who said, I think you love this book. And I'm like, okay. And that put the seed in my head of like, ooh, what is this? And it was also concurrent with me trying to come up with another movie idea. So I started to think about, ooh, can I make a movie about an ultramarathon? How can I research these things to consider it? and they wrote about a race called Badwater 135, which is a race in Death Valley in July, where runners run 135 miles through Death Valley, and they end on a mountain, on the highest point of Mount Whitney before you have to start hiking. And I went to it just to volunteer and work the race. And that changed my life also. Seeing people do this thing where it was 127 degrees, and I'm barely able to stand still without passing out, and people are running. And then I go to bed, and people are still running. And then I go to bed a second night, and people are still running. And finishing on a mountain looking like they've seen God because they're so delirious and have been having hallucinations in the desert. And while I didn't leave that experience thinking, I want to do this race, I left it thinking, can I do something more? Like these people, and they look like normal people. Like that's the thing I've learned about ultras. These people crossing the finish line are like, some of them are, my friend Bob finished it at 76 years old.
Wow.
And it is complete mind. It is, and that's what drew me in. I'm less interested. Some people say there are two types of marathon runners once you start to do a lot, the ones that want to get faster and the ones that want to go further. And to me, it's funny, I used to be so focused on numbers. How in my 20s when I was going through that difficult period, and now I don't care at all. I don't want to run. I don't care to do a marathon in 3 hours, 15 minutes. Like it doesn't interest me. What interests me is the mental journey. And I want to feel that. And I got curious about that. So yeah, then I started.
So in that regard, I'm sorry, go for it.
So what do you think is the biggest the biggest takeaway that you've had in this meditational process, and like in, let's say, in the marathon that you just did a few weeks ago?
In the 100-miler?
Yeah.
The Daytona 100, right?
Biggest one. It's impossible to get anything done unless you're 100% fully in the moment. I mean, you can get it done, but I don't think it will, in the end, whatever you're focused on, you miss out on the experience. Or you won't get to that finish line, the metaphoric or physical one. Like I never thought, of course it was in the back of my mind, oh no, 100 miles once it started. But the only thing I was focused on was just getting to the next checkpoint, which sometimes it was 2 miles. And a lot of the time I was thinking, when I couldn't run continuously, I set a goal of run 5 minutes, walk 5, run 5, walk 5. And I only focused on 5 minutes. Just get this 5 minutes done. And now, great, you get to walk for 5. All right, time to get 5 more minutes. And it's amazing how it's really made me like more relaxed about goals I have in my life.
I was going to say, it sounds just like life, no?
It is. And I use that metaphor all the time to people. And I'm like, I know it sounds cheesy, but it's so true that staying fully in the moment will make the big thing seem less scary. And eventually you'll just do it and it'll be done. And you'll be like, oh, wait, what? Like when I crossed the finish line, it wasn't some huge emotional crying fit. I thought it would be. I was just like, oh, cool. Okay. I guess I'll go take a nap now. Like I was very happy. But it was almost a letdown to cross the finish line.
Wow.
It was really weird. I was like, all right, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, speaking of experience and the human experience of, I mean, everything you have shared with us is incredible. I mean, it's really amazing. And thank you for doing that. How was the experience of 100 miles? How did that evolve? Like in the 5 minutes walk to 5 minutes run, what was going on with you in your mind?
I mean, there are so many sections of the race.
Yeah.
So basically, like to explain how the race overall works, if you've never run 100 miles before, you're required to have a crew. And most people have a crew of 2 to 3 people because they will be in a van leapfrogging you the entire time, giving you nutrition, checking in, help with like, do you need help popping a blister? Do you need what new clothing do you want to change into? And I just had a crew of 1, my boyfriend, Tom, who was incredible, but we mapped out ahead of time. We spent hours the night before plotting out on Google Maps where he saved these checkpoints for us that were suggested by the race director in like pages of a description. Like it's overwhelming to plan for. And we mapped out like 16 miles in, we'll do a checkpoint here. And I would say to him, I think at that point I'll need this and this. Can you ask me these questions? I know sometimes my hands swell up. Let's make sure to check my hands. If that happens, we should plan for this. And just talking through like our plan and letting him know like, this is what I'll need. I think another major thing it's like communication is huge. And it really reveals like whoever's on your crew, they're either going to become a friend for life or it's not going to go well. And it was a big risk being like, all right, this guy I'm in a relationship with, it's us. Like, how's that gonna go? And I was scared. I'm like, I don't want this to damage our relationship. And it made it just like, oh, wow. It reaffirmed the things that I knew were there that I was hoping would come through, which is, all right, when there's an issue.
So he did a good job.
Yeah, he was great. But so that's the like summary. So it started and I kind of panicked right at the beginning and thought, oh no, like I know I'm going to need to eat a lot. I should maybe like eat a lot right now. And I ate too many gels right at the start. You're supposed to have, I think, between 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour of running. Wow. And I ate 3 times that in the first hour because I was like, ooh, maybe I should just like, and it was so silly. I threw out my game plan. I got anxious and I overdid it. And then I had stomach issues that were catastrophic for 30 miles. I was battling really bad stuff. And then I just put a ginger chew in, drank some Pepto and kept running or walking, running, whatever. And then my stomach issues went away. So that to me is like the first third of the race. My stomach was awful. I was like, this might cost me. I can't keep any food in me. Nothing was staying in me. No liquid, like nothing. And then I had Ensure in the car and I was like, liquid calories. So I started chugging Ensure and that ended up saving me. I couldn't have anything the rest of the race that was solid food other than I had a few McDonald's French fries because I just was craving that at one point. Half of a grilled cheese sandwich and I think I had like 15 bottles of Ensure by the end of it.
Wow.
So you're eating as you're running.
So I would stop by the car at the checkpoints we agreed upon, quickly like chug something, shove food in my mouth and go unless it was a longer stop. Like there were a few times I popped a blister with a needle, wrapped it in tape, changed my socks, kept going. When I was sick, those were longer stops. It slowed me down a lot. If I had access to a bathroom without getting into any gory details, that was awful. So once I got through that morning part, the brutal first 30, the afternoon was great. It was exciting to know I had a renewed energy of knowing like.
What time did you start?
I had a 6 a.m. start time.
Okay.
So
you were overeating at what time? Like around
right
5
at the
o'clock?
start. So at 5, so I had a bagel in the morning with a banana and peanut butter on it before like an hour and a half before the race start. And then at the starting line, I ate 160 grams of carbs in just like, they were Martin gels, they're called. And it's like a clear kind of like gelatin-like thing that you just like, it's like a toothpaste tube that you just squeeze in your mouth and it goes down easy, almost too easy. Because then I was like, I should have another in 20 more minutes and 20 more minutes. And everything in my head was like, all right, and I have these salt tablets and I'm eating salt tablets. I've never lost my appetite in that way. Like even when I was struggling with food problems, I didn't lose my appetite. Like I was trying to put during the race just any kind of solid food in my mouth because I knew I had to eat. And it just felt like, it's hard to describe. It just felt like so dry and so like I knew it would make me really sick. So I just kept like I tried to eat another banana like 20 miles in, and I just had to spit it on the ground. I was like, I will throw up if I have this banana. So yeah, it was great to get through that. And then
so that was the first layer. That was the first
that was
thing.
like the first thing. I was like, wow. And the thing that everyone told me, I reached out because I've made a lot of friends in the running community through going to Badwater, through I've done 3 50-mile races. And I reached out to people. I was like, what advice would you give me? I'm like really nervous. What should I keep in mind? And they go, plan for everything, but just know that plan's gonna get thrown out. The things that you prepared for won't happen, and the things that you didn't think will happen are gonna happen. And all of that's true. I've never had stomach issues running. Yeah, exactly.
Just like life.
Yeah. And it just shows you like, and then you get through it and you're like, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm still going. You just have to keep moving forward. Like when you can, just keep going, unless you're very sick. And that's what I did. I just kept
What is it about I think what I want to try to ask and get to is there seems to be this thing about connecting with one's spirit or soul by pushing yourself beyond your body's limits. And there's some correlation about like pushing yourself through the pain gets you in touch with something beyond mind and body. Did you feel that at some point? Like, what is it about pushing through the pain for you that you're getting out of the experience?
It's interesting because you don't really forget about, like, the pain is always there. Like my knee gave out at mile 65 and I had to put a knee brace on, and it was just agony for the last 35 miles. I had blisters. I had such bad blisters that there were blisters I didn't discover for like 4 days after the race because I didn't know they weren't as painful. So like the pain never really fades, but there's something about having a singular focus that is freeing, where literally the only thing I did for 29 hours was move forward. That was it.
29 hours.
29. It took me. I was hoping for 24, but the stomach issues, and then it rained for 10 hours overnight, and the course flooded, and that's a whole other. That was awful. Torrential downpour.
So you're running through the rain, through the flood.
Through the flood, navigating. The flood was so bad. I was like, this is bad for my feet. I can't run through like water that's 6 inches high. Right. But it was nighttime, so I was like, I can't run. Running in the road's dangerous and not allowed in this part of the course. So I would run in the road for a bit and then run on this like sand mound that when you've run, this was 72 miles in around that point. We were literally on the beach. So it's a road next to the beach. It's all sand, which is just washing out from under my feet, becoming mud. It's messing up my ankles. It's just, I'm expending so much more energy just to run and winding around like, all right, the sidewalk looks not flooded this part. I'll go to the sidewalk. Now I'm back on the road. Now I'm on this mound. And that was absolutely exhausting. But yeah, to go back to the spiritual connection, yeah, it's a singular focus. For me, it didn't become I escaped and left my body and had some kind of like out of body. I was very much in my body, but I also felt very free because there's nothing. I love not having to worry about anything, but just I'm running. That's it. I'm just moving. Just get to that next point. And it's freeing. It's really, I don't know, like in everyday life, we're thinking about 500 things we're told we have to worry about. Like, do this. Did you answer that email? Are you prepping for this thing that you're working on? What are your goals? And this, like, none of that matters. You throw it all out the window.
Yeah.
Nothing matters but that race.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I was gonna say that to me was so interesting to see that when you started the race and you were pretty much in your rational mind kind of planning everything ahead, right? The first challenge that you had was kind of similar to what you had when you were young, to the story that you were telling us, with food and everything.
Yeah.
And that was the first filter that you had to overcome.
That's interesting, yeah.
It's so interesting. And then as you were evolving throughout the race, and you just allowed yourself to be there, to be connected, and just, it seems to me like there was a point where pain was not even noticeable because you were so connected to the moment that you were just going forward.
Yeah, I mean, and there's something like taking in the environment too. There were wild moments where I was going over a bridge over water, and a hawk swooped down, caught this huge fish, and just flew low above me, just murdering this fish. And I'm like, oh my God, nature's crazy. And then at night, the course dipped us in and out of the woods, and just hear it. Like, I only listened to music for 2 hours. Other than that, I was just listening to the sounds around me, talking to other runners. The thing that is really beautiful about this community of runners is you will not pass someone or be passed without being acknowledged. Everyone says, good job, you're looking great, keep going. Like, it is the most supportive community of people because we're all in it together.
Yeah, there's empathy.
Yeah, it's like, do you need help? Like other crew people in vans being like, do you need anything?
But I think it goes beyond that. Like, my experience as an spectator, like watching seeing the New York Marathon, is like the energy around the runners, it's the same. Because I find myself and I like with a bunch of people just like cheering everybody, up. I don't know anybody, but I get in the feeling.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful, like, to me, it's always a beautiful experience. I usually stop by for half an hour or something. Like, really, it's like unconditional support because I don't know anybody. And not only, when I say I say me and many people who are just there, like, clapping at you and just cheering and like, and you get like, to me, I was telling him about my experience in the last marathon because I feel that that's what humanity is about when everybody wants genuinely the other to succeed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Without any conditions, without any transaction. And that's the environment of a marathon to me. Like, I've never done it, but I have partaken in the, celebration of the event.
Yeah. I think the New York Marathon is the most beautiful day in New York.
Yeah.
And I think
I agree.
The world of ultra running takes that to a next level because there aren't as many people doing it. And there's no one cheering you on really, other than the people doing it. Because I was running through towns at a weird time of the day, at like 4 p.m. What race is happening? And I'm running through St. Augustine, Florida, literally through the town, like of tourist stuff on the sidewalk. And people see our bibs. And this woman looks at us and she's like, what are you all doing? And she starts kind of jogging alongside us. And we're like, oh, we're running 100 miles. And she's like, what? And she starts running with us, asking us all these questions. And she goes, from where? When did you start? And we're like, we started in Jacksonville at 6 a.m. And she's like, what? And we're like, yeah, bye, okay. And she's like telling her friends and pointing at us. And it's just what I love about, it's really funny. It's really funny to surprise people. And it's kind of nice to go from doing the New York Marathon and feeling all that like very obvious, like you feel like a rock star running that race, to doing an ultra where most people don't know what you're doing, have no idea. You're just running by them on the sidewalk, and unless they notice your bib, they think you're out for a 5 p.m. run. They have no idea.
Yeah.
Which is also terrifying when it's 3 a.m. at night and you're alone out there running and no one can see your bib, and you have your headlamp and your blinky lights and you're by yourself 2 miles until you see your crew. And it occurred to me for the first time, like, wow, I really am out here alone. Even though there's support for the race staff and people patrolling the race, like it made me feel
vulnerable.
Yeah, a little vulnerable and scared. And like, what if something? But I had my phone on me the whole time too.
Can I ask, Victoria, how do you think you've grown from this race as opposed to the 50 or the regular marathons? Because you've done those, you've moved to 50. So how is this race different for you?
I think it's the people. Like, I love the team aspect of it. In a 50, you don't have a team. You don't have, the check-ins are different. You run up to a table. It feels like a marathon, but with more snacks. You run up to a table and you'll eat some peanut butter crackers and you'll be like, bye. And it feels shorter. It feels almost not enough to me anymore to have a true, like, whoa, that was like Frodo bringing the ring to the mountain.
Yes.
So are you motivated to do more 100?
Yeah, I've already registered for
Okay.
Wow.
You just finished
Okay.
I just
2 weeks ago.
Well, when you're, the thing too is now I have close friends in this world who are reaching out to me saying, are you going to do this race? Because I'm going to do it. My friend Susie Chan, she's amazing. I met her through Badwater. And last year we did the social media for the race and we spent 3 days just glued to each other having a blast. She's the most inspiring person. She's overcome cancer and has run in the Sahara Desert, a 5-day race, just with everything on her back.
Oh my God.
Susie has the power and the magical ability to talk people into doing things that they didn't think they could do, but they kind of thought like maybe. So this past summer, I registered for Daytona because of Susie, because I kept saying, one day I'm going to do 100 miles. I'll do it one day. And she goes, stop saying one day. And when you go home from this race, register. She goes, do it. And do Daytona, because I know Bob, the race director, is the 76-year-old who I mentioned who finished Badwater. So he's the race director of Daytona. She goes, do Bob's race. You trust Bob. You love Bob. You know Bob. Do his race in December. You have plenty of time to train. I'm like, oh, you're right. I have no excuses. So I did Daytona because of Susie. And Susie texted me a couple days ago and she's like, hey, Victoria, are you going to do the Javelina 100? And I'm like, I was thinking about it. I don't know. I got to rest. And she's like, it's going to sell out. It's one of the most popular ultras. She goes, just worry about the details later. Just worry about it later. Just register. And I was like, okay. And I registered. It's in October. I have time.
So I have a question. So what now? How much of this is like the entirety of your life, and where do you stand on your original projects, directing, acting, and now how do you like compensate all of them? Are you gonna go deeper into running as a lifestyle and as your professional life, or is that just like giving you some strength to go back to acting and directing, or how does that shape you?
Yeah, I think the running stuff really just makes me feel like it is the best reminder of the things I need to be reminded of to keep writing and directing and working on projects. And it's a passion that I think I need outside of the industry where everything's out of control. You can put a date on a calendar, be like, oh, we're gonna film then, but maybe it doesn't happen, or maybe something out of your control. To me, it does keep going back to control too. Where like, I registered for that race. I'm gonna do it. And I have a goal that's in my control that even if I don't get to the finish line, that's not my concern. I'm going to have an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm going to have fun because I love these people and they're my friends. And to me, it keeps me sane and healthy. And it's my passion outside of the things I'll make money. I'm spending way too much money. The gels, the grocery bill of all the food I didn't end up eating alone, the hotels, the car rental, the flights, like it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it's an expensive hobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a hobby.
Well, it's an experience.
It's
as
an
you said. It is an
experience.
experience. When you were talking about feeling alone, the experience of being alone in the middle of the, what was it by the beach or in the
I'd have to look at a map to know. It was between miles 60 and 70.
Well,
that's all I know.
Were completely by yourself, right? And you have
I could see headlamps I could see blinking lights far away, but I was running this windy path through the woods and just hearing nature in Florida and being like, what is here? Is someone hiding in my paranoid New Yorker brain? I'm like, is someone in the woods hiding?
But my question is...
And I started hallucinating at that time.
Oh, wow. I was actually tapping into that. Do you feel opposite to that? Were there any point where you will feel connected to everything instead of separated from it?
Yeah, I mean, there are several times in other races where I felt that too. My first 50-mile race, I felt like death, like I could not keep going. And then all of a sudden, it was a trail race, upstate New York. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I got this second wind or energy. And when I was running this trail, I just felt like the trail was made for me. And like every rock and every step was just kind of like there. And I felt like I was just water flowing down this path. And then, a couple minutes later, that was gone and all the pain came back. During this race, I don't know that I had that as much, like this connected. I think it was just, I kept checking in my body, like, am I okay? How do my toes feel? How do my ankles feel? How are my knees? How am I at 5 minutes? Yeah. How many miles do I have until the next stop? But at the same time, I do these weird things when I'm running distances where I'll start to just kind of like think of a phrase that's not even a word and it'll become like a mantra. And I can't think of what one would be right now, but I'll just get in a rhythm and just say the same thing in my head over.
And those are phrases that you just came out with.
Out of nowhere. Something just occurs to me and I'll say something. And I started talking to myself like out loud, which I never thought I would do, but you kind of just keep yourself company. And I was like, it's okay, you got this. Like, all right, just navigate or go around that, or just little jokes to myself. Like, and I had two hallucinations where when I was in the forest, and it's funny because I felt so present and I felt so awake, but my brain was so sleep deprived and exhausted that it almost felt like, and people have described the hallucinations to me while running before of like, it's a hallucination. And it felt more like the light was playing tricks on me, where when I was in the woods, I thought I saw a dragon sitting in the tree watching me. Wow. And I was like, oh, hi, dragon. And I kept running because I thought, that's not real. There aren't dragons in Florida. And I kept running. And then a couple minutes later, there was a crew van. And next to it, I thought I saw, do you know those like clown carnival games that have the like fur coming out of them and you throw the thing and knock it down?
Yeah.
So I thought I saw like on the ground those clown things set up. And I was like, oh, and I justified it in my head. I was like, oh, a crew set up a game to play while they're waiting for their runner. And I'm running right at it. I'm like, oh, let me look at this. And right when I get right next to it, I realize it's a guy on the ground stretching his hamstring, and he just has a huge white, like gray and white beard. Wow. And the beard made me think it was the carnival game.
Wow.
And I was like, it's a person. Oh my God. So that was wild. But yeah, I was like, it's the carnival game. Yeah.
I guess I have one last question. Maybe we'll wrap it up. But you had said I want to go back to an analogy you started to say about like you don't think you would do 50s anymore because they seem too short. It's not like the Frodo bringing the ring to the
I will compare everything
mountain.
to Lord of the Rings.
I would too. I totally understand that. Maybe not everyone gets that reference, but basically you're saying you're doing the hardest thing you possibly can in your life. I mean, the analogy of bringing this ring to the mountain in Lord of the Rings. So why is that important for you to do?
I would do 50s again. I think for me, it's just about the people and the environment too. Like, can I go somewhere beautiful and run a 50-mile race, even a marathon? I did a 10K a few weeks ago because a friend who was just getting into running said, "Will you run this race?" And I said to her, "Of course." And I ran with her the whole time in Prospect Park. So for me, it's less like ruling distances out. It's the experience. Because I think in the past, I did a ton of races with my sister, and I'd be like, "Okay, bye, we're not gonna run together. I'm gonna like do the fastest possible time." And now like I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I want what is the experience of this race?
Okay.
So, but the experience of like Frodo bringing, like why I need that.
Why go for the hardest thing possible?
Yeah, I think I'm drawn to those Frodo mountain, going to Mordor. I just go back to my dad and knowing, I guess I'm a thrill seeker in some ways, in the personal journey kind of way of, I want to experience the most I can out of life. And if I think I can do something, I'm curious of what the experience is like. Like, what is it like to run 100 miles? And that was terrifying to me. And I now know, but also I don't.
Yeah.
It's going to be completely different the next time. And I'm so grateful that I can do that. But yeah, I think it's just even how I was in college, like diving into acting, like I'm drawn to the scary thing.
Awesome.
And what is that going to do for me?
Yeah.
Amazing.
How is your relationship with your dad today, knowing that he's not here in the, let's say, the physical world? But I know that through running, you evolved that relationship with him when he was here, with us. How is that now? Is he still present with you when you're running?
Not as much. Like, it's funny, running the 100-mile race, I thought I was going to think about all these really deep things. I thought I was going to think about my movie that fell apart and came back together and fell apart, and like, wow, I can get through anything, and my father's passing. And I kind of just felt like empty in this way of like, whatever I'm experiencing, I'll process. Like I was fully present. My mind did not go to the past or thinking about memories or thinking about my dad. I didn't need some kind of motivation to get through the end of like, I gotta do this for my dad. I was just like, all right, just keep moving. Just get to that tree. I was just fully in the moment. But how my relationship in general in doing this race, it just makes, I'm reminded that sometimes the worst things that happen to you happen for I don't know that it happens for a reason, but you discover what it's done for you sometime later where you're like, oh my God, if my dad didn't pass away at that moment in my life would be completely different right now. Like maybe I wouldn't be doing all these races. I probably wouldn't be writing and directing films. Maybe I'd still be 100% focused on acting. So it just makes me completely trust is a big word in running these distances. Trust that your crew's going to be there for you. Trust you can get to the end. Trust in your strength and your ability to focus. And trust that whatever you're going through in life, these like horrible events, like you'll get through it and you'll become a different person and something good could hopefully will come out of it if you just keep moving forward, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to end
That's
this
incredible.
segment,
It's a nice little button.
No, that's
incredible.
amazing.
That's incredible.
Before we close up, can you tell us what do you got going on next? What's next for you?
Well, I'm relaxing. I'm taking it easy.
Well, he's already prepping for the next.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna take
Right.
it easy.
I mean, like, as far as running goals,
No,
or just everything.
Everything. What's next for you?
I mean,
What's next for
the
Victoria?
first thing I thought of was I want to run the perimeter of Manhattan. That'd be really fun. I got this race in October. I think like I'm really interested this winter in just kind of like, I want to write a lot. I haven't written down a full like race report of what that experience was like. I want to like really document that and process it in writing form. So yeah, I think I'm just staying present. I think like I'm not trying to.
The feature you're developing.
The feature, yeah, I was just talking about this morning with a friend on the phone that I'm just trusting that process.
Yeah.
Because it was set December of 2022. We had a start date on the calendar. We were going to go. And then the financier just dropped out of nowhere. And that was absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
And we've been crawling back. And, I'm not giving up on it. I'm still pushing it forward, but not in this desperate, like, it has to happen right now.
Right.
When it happens, it'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know it will happen. I'm not worried about it anymore.
Yeah.
In the same way, this like desperate energy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm letting go of the control of that and just moving forward.
Amazing.
So yeah, maybe, hopefully, knock on wood, 2025.
Yes.
But yeah, I have other things that keep me going. Clearly.
That's great. The final question. You know that the podcast is called Coffee, Matcha, and the Soul.
Mm-hmm.
What's your definition of soul?
Ooh, what is my definition of soul? The essence of a person condensed into something that we can't see or understand, really. I don't think our human brains can fully grasp it yet, of what that even is. But I believe in that we all have a soul. I don't know that it's definable, but I think we're all unique people. And it's the essence. It's the essence of the person.
Well, thank you for sharing your essence with us.
Yeah.
Thank
today.
you for
Thank you.
allowing me the space.
Oh, this was great. Thank you, Victoria. Thanks for
Yay.
being here.
Thank you.
Okay.